Grade 12 Economics, please welcome Mr. Mhlomo. I'm back here with you today to take you on microeconomics. Under microeconomics, we are doing imperfect market. The main topic we are doing under imperfect market is oligopoly. So in this lesson, we will simply break down the whole behavior of oligopoly and also explain all conditions that prevail under the oligopoly market. So please join me. Let's see what we have for you today during this lesson. So these are the lesson objectives for this lesson of today. So they will assist you to understand the oligopoly behavior. We will break down the oligopoly behavior and explain how does it behave as compared to other market structures that we have. You will know characteristics of oligopoly, which are very important because as for your examination guideline, they appear as an essay together with their demand curve. So they will be explained thoroughly. Collusion will be explained. We normally talk about it, we have been talking about it in previous markets, saying there is no collusion, but then it will be discussed in details here with different types of collusion being explained in this lesson for today. Profit and loss by oligopolies will be explained again, so that you will see how do the profit occur under oligopoly. Graphically, you will be able to illustrate the graph that shows the profit and economic loss, including normal profit. Even conditions that we will have to prevail for the firm to make profit or loss, they will be explained. And then the kinked demand curve for the oligopoly will be explained. The reason why it's so kinked, it will be explained. The reason for these two segments that are there, they will be explained. And then non-price competition strategies used by oligopolies will be explained. Remember, oligopoly does not compete using the price because that leads to the price war. They always use the non-price competition strategies in order to improve or increase their sales. So it is believed that you already know the following as for the markets. You know perfect market conditions that prevail as well as perfect market structure. That has been done before. You know monopoly conditions. All conditions that prevail under monopoly as well as the monopoly structure is well known as we are in this lesson. So this is the body or the structure of our lesson. What will be discussed? Types of oligopolies will be explained. Examples of oligopoly will be explained. Characteristics will be explained. And then our lesson is divided into different parts. So the first part is all about these types, examples, and characteristics. And the second part will be about something else, which will also be elaborated. So if we talk about oligopoly briefly, we mainly talk about the market structure that exists if there are few large firms and many buyers. So in the market, there will be few large firms. You need to underline few large firms. That is very important. Then the oligopoly will exist in there. So as for different types of oligopoly, we have two types of oligopoly that exist. It can be a pure oligopoly and a differentiated oligopoly. A pure oligopoly is oligopoly that supplies or produces homogeneous products. And then a differentiated oligopoly is the one that produces differentiated products. Differentiated product will be explained to you. And then firms that exist within the oligopoly industry will be given. We talk about motoring industry, cell phone industry, banking industry, a steel industry, washing powder industry, etc. So they will all be given to you. And then we will explain and discuss in details characteristics of oligopoly. How do we see oligopoly if it's in the mixture with other market structures? That will be explained to you. So, like I said, oligopoly. This is the market structure that exists if there are few large firms and many buyers. So, oligopoly is an imperfect market structure that exists when there are few large firms and many buyers. So, firms that exist under oligopoly are few. They are not that much as you can compare to monopolistic and the perfect market. So, they are few and they are very large. The reason why these firms are few is because the entry is not completely free under oligopoly. Barriers to entry do exist to prohibit the entry of some new businesses. Also, the capital that is required as a startup cost for the business is very, very high, which becomes a barrier to entry. It becomes actually a natural barrier to entry to block the entry of new businesses into the market. That's why we have few large firms that exist in there. Obviously, there will always be some smaller firms that will be there, and they will be dominated in the industry. They don't dominate, they will always be dominated in the industry or in the market. Oligopoly firms are able to influence the supply of a product or a service to a market. So these firms can always influence the supply of the product. How do they do that? There is a practice that they normally use, which is more about cartels, where they group themselves together as associations, where they discuss everything about the pricing as well as production techniques, which is known as the price fixing. So that is used to influence the supply of the product. They normally take care of the price in order to influence the supply of the product. That will be explained. By controlling the supply of the product or service in the market, oligopolies aim to keep prices very high. So oligopolies firms, as they try to maintain their profit, they ensure that they increase their prices to be very, very high. So for them to maintain their high profit, they increase prices in the market. If the market is dominated by two firms, the market, that market is known as a duopoly, if ever there are only two firms that are dominating the market. But if we say in this case, few large firms and many buyers, then in that case, it will be oligopoly because it's more than two firms that are in there. So types of oligopoly, we have a pure oligopoly, like I've said, to say it's an oligopoly that produces a homogeneous product. We call that one a pure oligopoly. So pure oligopoly is the oligopoly that produces homogeneous or products or services. So these goods produced by oligopoly in this case are homogeneous or identical or similar. In that case, we can talk about the petroleum industry, whereby they provide simply the same products. And then we have a differentiated oligopoly, which is known as the product that produces differentiated products. Then we call that one differentiated oligopoly. Most of differentiated oligopoly exist. You can talk about motoring industry. Cars can look the same, but they're not the same, they're not identical, because specifications in there and branding are not similar. Different firms produce goods that have their own distinguishing characteristics, yet all of them are close substitutes for each other, or they are perfect substitutes. So if we talk about differentiated products, we talk about products that they look similar, but they are not the same. They have some differing characteristics because branding is not the same. And then, but appearance can look the same at times, but branding is totally different from each other. So those goods are known to be differentiated. However, these goods are the perfect substitutes for each other. They can replace one another. And then examples of oligopolies. Which industries do have that operate under oligopoly? We talk about banking industry. Banking sector is under oligopoly because you can see their practices, and also the capital required in there is too high. We talk about the steel industry, washing powder industry, motoring industry, cell phone industry. We continue. We talk about the cement industry, fuel industry, milk industry, as well as fertilizer industry. All of these are the examples of industries that are within the oligopoly market. So these are the basic characteristics of oligopoly. So we answer the question here onto how do we see oligopoly if it is mixed with other market structures or other markets. So under oligopoly, there is a limited competition. So if we say there's a limited competition, we mean there is no much competition within the market. There are few sellers that exist within the market to supply these homogeneous or differentiated products. If you can compare oligopoly to the perfect market, the competition in the oligopoly is lower than the one for the perfect or monopolistic, because under the oligopoly, the entry is not simply accessible, it's not freely accessible, it is blocked by some barriers to entry. So only few large sellers of the same product dominate the market. There are few large sellers that exist in there to dominate the market. And then usually there are few big firms that dominate the market, plus a number of smaller firms which together produce a small percentage of the total output. So under the oligopoly, Firms that dominate the market are the ones that are large firms, the ones that are having more capital, and the ones that are more efficient and produce at the economic of scale. And then there will be those smaller firms that exist within the industry or market. So the market competition is not as wide as the one for the perfect market. It is not as wide as the one for the perfect market because high capital requirement becomes a stumbling block for smaller firms to access the market. So this capital which is required for the firms to enter the market becomes a barrier to entry. Therefore, firms find it difficult to enter the market. Then oligopoly firms find themselves enjoying those profits, being very few within the market. There is also what we call a mutual dependence. So there's an interdependence in there because firms watch each other very, very close under oligopoly. No firm acts independent. Each firm under oligopoly will always keep an eye on its competitors because any decision by one competitor will always affect the decision to be made by another competitor. Because remember, that in the industry producing or selling goods and services, there is what we call a market share. They also fight over consumers. They all want to maintain their profits and keep their profits high. So if one business make a decision that will compromise profits for another business or a competitor, that business will need to act on that to avoid losing its profit to the competitor. So there is what we call a mutual interdependence. Firms are very much linked. They are very much dependent on one another in terms of decision making. At times, one firm might make a decision on decreasing the price, and other firms might decide to decrease their prices too. So that is the game that they are playing under the oligopoly. So interdependence means that actions of one firm affect actions of another firm. If one firm make economic decision under oligopoly, other firms will quickly react because they are avoiding losing their profits and their market share to the rival firm. Each seller is influenced by the other actions or other actions of other sellers. So if one firm is acting, other firms will act. So they watch each other very close to see which decision will be made by the competitor. If the decision is beneficial and economical, they might simply react by adopting the same decision. But if it's not economical, they might not. So there is what we call a mutual dependence, which make them to be very much linked. And again, they don't trust each other as much as they watch each other very close. They don't trust each other because they must mislead each other in there. They might mislead each other in there as they make decisions because they want to reap more profits in the market. So decisions of one firm will influence decision that is taken by other sellers in the market. So the decision regarding prices, quantities. So based on prices, quantities, and marketing depends on what it thinks the other oligopolies in the market is going to do in response to his action. If one firm decides to make economic decision based on the price of quantity or marketing, then other firms will have to react. So this firm that have decided on the price will be watching them. How are they reacting to the decision that have been made? So that talks about interdependence. Competitors may react in many ways to price reduction by a competitor. So it is not guaranteed that they will be reacting in the same way. Some might adopt the strategy taken by the firm, some might not adopt the strategy. For instance, if one firm decides to decrease the price in order to get more consumers, then some other firms might adopt that price while others might not. But what happens if one firm decreases the price in the pure oligopoly and then other firms remain without decreasing their prices too? Those firms will be losing their consumers to these other firms that have lowered the price because consumers in there will be comparing prices. Remember, there's a competition, so there's this thing of sensitiveness to the price change. Consumers will be sensitive to the change in price and go to the firm that is supplying the similar product but at the lower cost. Then the firm with the higher price will be losing its consumers, but the ones with lower price will be making sometimes economic profit or small profit, or they will be getting more consumers at the expense of the one that keep their prices high. So there's always that movement within oligopoly between firms. So actions are very much important, and watching one another is very important so that action can be taken or decision can be taken if it is being followed or not. And then we continue with the mutual dependence. A firm considers the action and reaction of the rival firms while determining its price and output. This means if a firm decides on the price or output, it always think about how will its competitors do based on that price that has been determined by the competitor. So they always have that in mind to say, if I do this as a firm, firm A and B will be doing this maybe. So they always consider each other because they are competing in there. A change in output or price by one firm evokes reaction from other firms operating in the market. If one firm decides to change the price, that will mean other firms will react. They will simply give it more attention and see how can they do, and what can they do better in order to avoid losing their consumers to the rival firm that have just lowered the price. And then it is therefore impossible to formulate a single theory for the price and the production decisions. Indeed, it is not simple to simply have the same theory or the one theory that will determine what will other firms do if the oligopoly firm increase or decrease the price. It will always be difficult because reactions are always different. Depending on the gain that is possible for the firms, they sometimes take risk to follow with the other firm only to find that they will be operating at a loss as they do so. The general behavior of oligopolies is not predictable. That is the bottom line. You cannot simply predict how oligopolies firms will behave as one other competitor make economic decision. Barriers to entry. So under oligopoly, some barriers to entry exist that block the entry of new businesses. In there might be patents that prevent the entry of other businesses. There is also high capital or high startup cost, which is there as a barrier to entry to block the entry of smaller businesses. Also, if firms are very much efficient or they produce at the economies of scale, that means that the firm is producing more goods at the lower cost and is also selling at the lower cost. That gives competitors that are inefficient no opportunity to compete with that particular firm because that firm is more productive. So that become also a barrier to entry. So firms find it difficult to enter the market and compete with the strategic and well-established industries because those industries are having the specialization. They produce at the economies of scale, they produce more goods, they sell them at the lower cost, which means any competitor that will want to come in will be coming in to produce maybe at the diseconomies of scale and will be selling at the higher cost. That means competition there will be too high for the firm because higher prices make consumers to be very much sensitive. The main reason for few firms under oligopoly is the barrier which prevent the entry of new businesses in the industry. So there are some barriers that are always there to prevent the entry of new businesses. Barriers to entry can be natural or artificial. So some barriers to entry can be economical, some can be created. If we talk about economical or natural barriers to entry, we refer to economies of scale by firms, efficiency by firms, high startup capital by firms. Those become the natural barriers to entry because they are economical. Artificial barriers to entry can be patents or licensing given by the government to businesses to be the only producers of a particular product for the given period of time. So those are artificial barriers to entry. They are created through restrictions or regulations by the government. So patents, a requirement of large capital, control over crucial raw material, and brand royalty are some of the reasons which prevent the new firms from entering the market. These are some barriers to entry that will always be there to prevent the entry of new businesses in the market. In there, we also add economies of scale or the efficiency of those strategic businesses can be a barrier to entry to new entrants because efficient business produce more goods at the lower cost, while inefficient business produce less goods at the higher cost. This results to few firms dominating the industry, which helps them to maintain their profits. So few firms remain in the industry. As a result, they find themselves maintaining their high profits because they can simply dominate the industry, being very, very much few. Nature of products. Like we have stated before that under oligopoly, firms are producing homogeneous products or differentiated products. Under pure oligopoly, firms produce homogeneous products. Under differentiated, they produce differentiated products. Remember, homogeneous products are products that are similar. They are identical. They can replace each other very easily. They are the perfect substitute for one another. So those are known as homogeneous products while differentiated products are products that look similar in appearance, but they are not really the same. They differ in branding. They are not really the same. At the same time, they differ in taste, if ever one should be tasted. So those are regarded as a differentiated product. Product can be homogeneous or differentiated under oligopoly. Homogeneous products are produced by pure oligopoly, which include fuel. So fuel industry provides those homogeneous products because if you can check all fuel filling stations, they are selling the similar thing, meaning those products or the fuel is identical to consumers in there. Product can also be differentiated, such as the car and cell phone industry. Those products satisfy the same utility. They can replace each other because they are the perfect substitute. However, they are differentiated. They are not really the same. They can look the same. Differentiated products are produced by differentiated oligopoly. Whether products are differentiated or homogeneous, they will substitute each other, like I said, even if they are differentiated or homogeneous, but these goods can be substitutes for one another. Control over the price. So, oligopoly is one of the imperfect market structures, meaning it is having a considerable control over the price. Each firm under oligopoly have a say or the control over the price. So that will be explained. Each oligopoly firm has a considerable control over the price, especially when they get involved in joint decision making. Remember, it happened that under oligopoly firms become joint or they collude or they form what you call cartels. As they belong to certain cartels, that's where they discuss those things of pricing and production techniques. So in there, the firm will be able to have a say as they group themselves as association under cartels. This will result to abnormally high profits and high prices. So if ever firms are controlling their own prices, they always play around the output and the price in order to keep their profits high. So if firms are controlling the price or are setting the price or they are known as the price setters, they always set higher prices in order to maintain or to keep their profits very, very high. Oligopolies are characterized by price rigidity because if one firm decreases its prices, competitors will also decrease their prices. So the price doesn't move that much because now these firms, remember I said they are very much interdependent. If one firm decides to decrease the price, competitors might do the same so that they avoid losing their consumers and also losing their market shares to the firm that have just decreased the price. So it is very important that firms watch each other very closely in this case. So one firm influence the price, other firms will be having a reaction over that so that they avoid losing their profit. A price decrease by one firm can initiate a price war. If one price decides to decrease, if one firm decides to decrease the price under oligopoly, other firms might consider decreasing their prices too to avoid losing consumers. So that common reaction under oligopoly is regarded as a price war because firms now will be competing using the price. They will be fighting over the price. So normally under oligopoly, that doesn't occur more often because they find themselves within the cartels where they make the uniform decision about the pricing. That will be explained. And then market information. Under oligopoly, remember, it's one of the imperfect market structures that does not have a complete or perfect information, meaning consumers do not have a proper or pure information about the prevailing market conditions. They get limited information. Again, producers, those that are willing to be possible competitors in the industry, do not access the information they need. Information is not complete in there for them. They find imperfect information because for oligopolies, it will always be good for them to keep their information safe or hide their information from possible competitors because if competitors get information, they might beat them on the competition and that might make them to lose even profit. Buyers and sellers do not have perfect information about prevailing market conditions under the oligopoly. Oligopoly firms do not provide full information to prevent competitors from using it against them to win market share. If ever the firm decides to share its information to the public, competitors might use that information against that particular firm to win the market share. So oligopolies decide to keep their information safe. They hide it to prevent competitors from getting this information that can be used against them. As much as oligopolies watch each other closely, they do not discover complete information about each other, which results to the lack of trust within the market. So the information is hidden. Information is not completely available. So because of that, it is always be difficult for those competitors under oligopoly to trust one another, because you will not know as a competitor what is hidden by your competitor. What is the plan to steal your consumers? What is the plan to dominate the market? So it's always difficult. That's why there's a lower element of trust under the oligopoly. That is because information is not perfect. The firm might have the pure information on its own, but information cannot be spread out to the competitors, because as they get information, they might use information against you as the main owner of information. Then you might lose your market share and you might lose your consumers within the market. And then we continue with the market information. Oligopolies actively compete with each other to gain more market share, and in their quest to do so, they may hide their information. To ensure that competition continues, they hide the information on each other, because we know, like I've said, one firm might use other firms' information against it so that it can win its own consumers and dominate the market. Oligopoly therefore deliberately withhold certain information from the market to retain competitive advantage, so that it can keep being competitive to get that advantage, or to obtain that advantage in the market. It always hide information or withhold information within the market from its own competitors. Disclosing information may result to the competitors using it again to gain more market share. If one firm decides to disclose information, it might be used against the firm, and those firms might be gaining market share at the expense of this firm that have just disclosed information to the public. And then collusion. Remember, collusion is illegal, but it's common and considerable under oligopoly. It's been happening. Collusion occurs when suppliers within the market manipulate price and quantities that they sell in order to maximize their profits. They simply manipulate the price and their production in order to keep their profits high. We call that the collusion. So collusion can occur in different ways. It can be implicit and explicit. If it's an implicit, that means that one is a hidden collusion or tacit collusion. So that kind of the collusion occurs in a manner that it is not noticeable. There is no evidence of it, but the explicit one is noticeable, because friends can meet and discuss. There's evidence of discussion. So these kinds of collusions will be explained. Collusive behavior reduces market competition and increases inefficiency. If ever firms are colluding, meaning they're getting together and discuss the price, that will mean they might find themselves selling at the same price. What will happen? The consumer will find itself without having enough choice, because if all firms are now selling at the similar price, the same product, consumers are no longer having alternative then, because now firms are selling at the same price. So this reduces competition, because firms become a unit at the expense of a consumer, and they always sell higher at the higher price. If they try to collude over the price, or they do what you call a price fixing. Also, this results to inefficiency within the market, because consumers might be in need of the product, only find that they cannot afford it due to the fact that it's expensive. Also, at the same time, the market might be willing to supply the product, but consumers are not able to afford it because of the higher price. So goods end up being supplied to only those that can afford. The rest will not get to access the product. Also, if ever firms are colluding, it will be difficult for them to push themselves to be very much efficient, because now they become friends, they decide the similar price. So they will not receive much incentive to improve themselves that much, because now they've decided to collude and make uniform and common decisions about the price and production techniques. So collusion occurs in two ways, which can be implicit and explicit. So like I said, implicit collusion is known as the hidden collusion or the tacit collusion. Explicit is known as an overt collusion. So stealing or copying a competitor's idea is referred as implicit collusion. If one firm steals an idea from another firm or from the competitor without any formal discussion and agreement, that is regarded to be an implicit collusion, because implicit collusion prevails if firms copy each other's ideas without any formal discussion and agreement. So that is known as an implicit collusion. So if one firm steals its competitor's ideas maybe based on the price, marketing, as well as production techniques. That is regarded to be an implicit collusion because it does not have any formal discussion and agreement. So, formal agreements on price and production arrangements is referred as an explicit collusion. If firms simply meet and discuss the price and the production techniques in there, that is regarded to be an explicit collusion because firms have met and they have discussed what to do. That is regarded to be an explicit collusion or an overt collusion. And then efficiency. Under oligopoly, oligopoly express productive inefficiency because it is motivated to produce at the higher cost and restrict the output. So in there will always be productive inefficiency because firms are always producing at the higher cost. Collusion increases market inefficiency since agreements consider profit of producers at the expense of consumers. Whenever firms are making agreements, they always consider themselves gaining more profit at the expense of consumers, meaning they will always increase the price in order to maintain their profits at the expense of the consumer. Then that results to the market inefficiency because there might be oversupply of the product while the demand is too low. Allocative inefficiency is experienced in the oligopoly because firms are not motivated to produce the optimum output desired by consumers. So firms are not always motivated to produce the highest output or maximum output desired by consumers because consumers might not be affording the product due to the fact that it is costing higher prices or it is cost effective. So allocative inefficiency occurs in there and also productive inefficiency prevails under oligopoly. Oligopoly really meets consumer demand at the required time. There is always this thing of under supply of goods. Consumers might be demanding more, there might be lower supply. Firm might be supplying more, there will be a lower demand. And then profits and loss for the firm under oligopoly. What kind of the profit is made by oligopoly in both short run and long run? So firms under oligopoly, they always have short run profits. So these profits can be supernormal or abnormal when average revenues are more than average cost of doing the business. So the firms in there will be making a supernormal profit. It's also possible for oligopoly firm to make economic loss if it's in the short run, if average cost exceed average revenues. It's possible. If costs are more than revenue, the firm can find itself making economic loss. So the oligopoly maintain its economic profits in the long run because it is difficult for new firms to enter the market. So the market is not easily accessible to new firms. Therefore, firms are easy, or it is easy for the firms to maintain their profits in the long run. The market is not easily accessible. Therefore, firms can maintain their profit even in the long run under oligopoly due to the fact that there are some barriers to entry that prohibit the entry of new businesses. And then the demand curve. We know that the demand curve for the oligopoly is known to be a kinked demand curve. That's a demand curve that is very much unique as compared to other demand curves we are having. It is kinked. It is having two segments. The first one is the top segment, and the bottom one, we have the second one, which is the bottom segment. The top segment is known as relatively elastic demand curve, and the bottom segment demand curve is known to be relatively inelastic demand curve. That will be explained. The kinked demand curve is the demand curve with two segments, like I've said. There are two segments, namely top segment, relatively elastic, bottom segment, relatively inelastic. The top segment is relatively elastic, which indicates that consumers are very quick to react to the increase in price. If ever one firm increases the price, consumers will react very quick under oligopoly market because firms are there. There's a competition in there under oligopoly. Therefore, if one firm decides to increase the price within the pure oligopoly, while other firms keep their prices down, consumers will quickly react and demand goods and services from firms that are still selling at the lower cost. And then we call that consumer sensitiveness or consumer reaction to the change in price. The bottom segment is relatively inelastic, which indicates that consumers are less sensitive. They don't react very quick if ever the price is decreasing. Why that happens? That happens because if one firm under oligopoly decreases the price, it's highly possible that competitors will also decrease their prices. So, any expected profit or gain by the firm that initially decreased the price will be lost immediately because all other firms will be selling at the same lowered price. which lead to the consumers not to quickly react to the change in price. So there will be a slight change in quantity demanded to the decrease in price because firms are more sensitive in there. They will always reduce their prices to avoid losing their consumers or market share to their competitors that have decided to sell at the lower price. So consumers find no incentive to leave their suppliers for other competitors if all firms have adopted to sell at the lower cost. So for the consumer, there will be no incentive. Remember, consumers, for them to make any decision, there is always an incentive to consider. If one firm increases the price while other firms are selling at the lower price in the same market, that will mean consumers will consider the incentive of gaining more, of affording more product at the lower cost than affording less at the higher cost. But if one firm increase the price while others are still selling at the lower, there will always be an incentive. There will always be what we call the opportunity cost in there. And then this is the demand curve that we say is kinked. You can check, we have our vertical axis, the price, and the horizontal axis, there is the quantity. And then our top segment, there is the top segment moving straight there. It is a flat demand curve you can check as you compare to the bottom segment, which is a little bit steep. You can see this is the top segment and it's relatively elastic. This is the bottom segment, it's relatively inelastic. So this 50 is our collusive price. This is the quantity that can be consumed or demanded by the consumers at this price, which is 50 rand. And then the second part of our lesson, the collusion. Now we have to explain the collusion in detail with all these types of collusion and the effects of collusion in the economy. So we have collusion as a concept to be discussed in the second part of the lesson. We have the effects of collusion and then we have types of collusion. So let's see what is in this kind of the lesson, which is the second part of our lesson. So the collusion concept being explained. Collusion refers to the combinations, conspiracies, or agreements among sellers to raise or fix prices and reduce output in order to increase profits. So in this case, that's when firms gather themselves or meet to discuss the price and production techniques in order to be able to maintain their profits or keeping their profits high. That is known as a collusion. Collusion does not necessarily have to involve explicit agreements or communication between firms. Collusion can occur without any formal agreement or without any meeting between firms. When firms are copying each other's strategies, that is regarded to be implicit collusion. In oligopolistic industries, firms tend to be interdependent. They are very much reliant on each other in their pricing and output decisions. So that the actions of each firm impact on and result in a counter response by other firms. So if one firm in there make a decision, like I've said before, other firms are always very much intact of making a decision that is similar in order to keep their consumers and keep their profits at the higher rate. So firms are very much linked on each other. They are very much interdependent. One firm make a decision, other firms might make the common decision. That is regarded to be what we call an implicit collusion or tacit collusion or a hidden collusion, because firms will be copying each other's ideas without any formal agreement. So in such circumstances, oligopolistic firms may take their rivals' actions into account and coordinate their actions as if they were cartel without an explicit or overt agreement. So firms here can simply act very much common without any formal agreement, as if they were cartels while they were not cartels. Such coordinated behavior is often referred as tacit collusion or conscious collusion or parallelism, or it can also be called a hidden collusion or implicit collusion, whereby there is no formal agreement. No business in an oligopoly can ever be certain about the reaction and behavior of the competitor, which means that they function in a very unpredictable environment or manner. So business do not trust each other. Like I've said before, there is a lack of element of trust. So no business can simply confirm or predict what will other competitors do if ever they make those decisions. So they always react in a manner that will suit their profit and market share. Therefore, collusion always exists in there, either implicitly or explicitly. In an effort to eliminate uncertainties, firms decide to collude because they don't trust each other. So they decide simply to collude. They decide to form cartels. They decide to group themselves together so that they can discuss those decisions that are relevant so that there will be a reduced competition and they can maintain their prices higher as well as their profits. We continue with the collusion. Collusion takes place within the industry when rival companies or competitors cooperate for their mutual benefit. And then, as we continue, a conspiracy usually involves an agreement between two or more sellers to take action or suppress competition between sellers in the market. So, two or more firms find themselves acting together or making a decision together or agreement. Because competition among sellers can provide consumers with low prices, a conspiracy agreement increase the price consumers pay for the product or goods. If ever firms meet and discuss the price, they will always decide on the higher price. So that will lead to consumers having to pay higher prices for particular products or for poor quantity of goods and services. Because of this harm to consumers, it is against the antitrust laws to fix prices by agreement between producers. So participants must keep their secret. So in this case, after they have done this thing of colluding, they must keep that as a secret. This should not be discussed over because that might be investigated between those businesses and they might be slapped with heavy fines by the competition tribunal. So now we talk about the types of collusion and how do they occur. We have the first one, an implicit collusion, as well as an explicit collusion. Remember, implicit collusion does not involve any formal agreement and formal discussion between firms, but explicit collusion involves a formal discussion and agreement between firms where they make some decisions based on pricing and production techniques. That's why they fix prices. But implicit does not consider any agreement. Firms will simply copy each other's strategies without any formal agreement or discussions. So we talk about implicit collusion here. Implicit collusion happens when a group of firms manipulate the marketplace through interdependent actions, but without coming to a formal agreement. So firms simply react in the same way without coming together in a form of discussion or reaching a certain agreement. Each firm will simply act on its way, but it will be common to copy a particular firm's decision. That is known to be an implicit collusion. Competitors do not necessarily meet to make price and production arrangements. They copy decisions of rivalries. So this means firms or businesses will simply copy other firms' decisions based on the price, marketing, and production techniques without any formal discussion between themselves. So that will be an implicit collusion. So implicit collusion occurs through the price leadership process that will be discussed. Remember, under oligopoly, we have this firm that is known as a price leader or a dominant firm. A price leader is a firm that is large enough in the market or is a firm with more market share, which is about 32% in the industry. That one will be regarded to be a price leader. That means a price leader will always determine its own price on behalf of the entire market. When the price leader sets the price, other firms that are led by this price leader will copy the price and take it as a selling price. That is the effect of the price leader. So the price leader can be caused by the firm maybe is too efficient on the product. So the firm will be given a power to determine the price. Or the firm is too much dominant on the market. So it's having more consumers as compared to other competitors. That will lead to the firm be regarded as a price leader within the industry. One largest firm within the industry determines the price on behalf of the entire market. So one largest firm with more market share will always determine the price under oligopoly on behalf of the entire competitors or the entire market. So in that case, that firm is regarded to be a price leader because it sets the price for every firm that is competing with, and all other firms that are dominated are taking the price. So in that case, we say that's a price leadership process. And then we have an implicit collusion. It continues. This is the type of collusion that is not transparent. It is therefore referred as a hidden or tacit collusion. So there is no discussion taken on this kind of the collusion. There is no transparency. Every decision made is made on corners without any formal agreement or formal discussion. In this case, firms do collude, but implicitly so, without any transparent discussion between themselves. Therefore, they copy each other's ideas. Implicit collusion is difficult to trace because committee's reactions do not show evidence of deliberate discussion between firms. So there is not always a deliberate discussion. There is no a meeting between firms, but firms simply copy each other's ideas based on a economic decision. Therefore, that is regarded to be an implicit collusion. So the example of an implicit collusion can be, let's say you are selling sweets in your school. As you sell sweets, there is this other competitor that is selling sweets. Maybe the sweet is selling at 1 rand per unit. And then you discover that your competitor have just decided to decrease the price of a sweet from 1 rand to 70 cents. So for you to avoid losing your consumers to the competitor that have just decided to sell at the lower price, you might decide to copy the price, which is 70 cents, so that you avoid losing your market share for consumers. That will be regarded to be an implicit collusion because there was no formal discussion between you, but you simply copied the price. Same thing apply as a competitor. You decide to increase your price in order to get more profits as you sell your sweets. And then also, your competitor decide to increase his or her prices too. That will mean an implicit collusion because there was no formal discussion and agreement between you as competitors, but decisions taken were common because one copied a decision for another competitor. So that is regarded to be an implicit collusion. So for instance, in the washing powder industry, one firm brought the smart packaging, and then at the later stage, rivals adopted the smart packaging without any formal agreement. So when one firm brought about the smart packaging of the washing powder, other firms came with the same packaging, which is very smart, meaning they wanted to ensure that they don't lose their consumers because of that smart packaging. They decided to invest on that packaging too, so that they would maintain their consumers and their profits flowing in. And then the question, how does implicit collusion occur? And then let's see. Implicit collusion occurs through the price leadership process. Remember, there is this process that we call the price leadership, whereby the price leader or the dominant firm will determine the price for the entire market. So the price leader will determine the price on behalf of all other firms. Then other firms will have to copy that price. That is the price leadership process. Price leadership process or price leadership refers to a situation where prices and price changes established by a dominant firm or a firm or a firm are accepted by other as the leader, and which other firms in the industry adopt and follow. So in this case, there is this one firm that will be setting the price and all those changes in the price. And then these other firms that are dominated will decide to adopt the price taken by this dominant firm. Remember, the dominant firm should always be the firm with at least higher market share within the industry, the firm with more consumers in the industry, the firm that is more efficient in the industry. It is regarded to be a dominant firm, therefore that firm will be known as a price leader. But it also occurs in other way around, whereby the firm is very much efficient on the product, or the firm have invested a lot on that particular product, so it's too good as compared to other firms, even though it's not bigger. The firm might be deciding the price on behalf of other firms. Also, if the firm understands market condition more than any other competitor, those competitors might see that firm as the one that should be making decisions first before they make their own decisions, because that firm becomes a signal. If ever it increases the price, other firms will do the same because that firm is the one that understands the most of market condition than these other competitors. So, price leader is normally a firm that is large enough to have at least 32% market share within the industry. This is the firm that will be dominating, having at least 32% market share or above within the industry. So, the price leader is referred to be a dominant firm. This is the firm that is dominating its competitors. And then, as we continue, and then types of price leadership. How do they occur? They occur in 3 occasions. We have a barometric price leadership, collusive price leadership, and the dominant price leadership. So let's explain each of them so that we'll know if we talk about the price leadership. So barometric price leadership. A barometric price leadership model occurs when a particular firm is more adept than other firms at identifying shifts in applicable market forces, such as change in production costs. So this one occurs if one firm is too good to understand the change in market forces. So that firm will always be making proper decisions. So other firms will be investing on that firm to make their own decisions. If this firm make a decision, or this price leader make a decision, other firms will always make the same decision after that, because they do trust this firm, since it is too good on understanding the shift and the flow of market forces within the economy. This allows the firm to respond to market forces more efficiently. For instance, the firm may initiate the price change. So they always observe this firm under barometric price leadership. If this firm decides to increase the price, they will simply follow, because now they understand it's a good time to change the price or to increase the price. If the firm decrease the price, they will simply follow, because they understand it should be a good time to decrease the price. Looking at the firm that simply understand the shift of market forces efficiently as compared to them as competitors. It is possible for a firm with a small market share to act as a barometric price leader if it's too good. I mean, if it's a good producer, and if the firm is attend to trend in its market, other producers may follow its lead. So the firm can be small, but if the firm is too good in that particular product and also is too good on market forces, other firms will always invest on waiting for the firm making a decision under barometric price leadership, and then they will always follow that particular firm with that particular decision, because the firm is very much good on monitoring the change in market forces or forces of the market. And then we talk about the collusive price leadership. So this one, it occurs as a result of the explicit or implicit collusion. So the collusive one simply occurs because firms have made maybe a discussion about the price and decided to manipulate consumers. Or there's an implicit collusion, so where there was no agreement between firms. So one of the two, it can occur either explicitly or implicitly. Agreement among a handful of dominant firms to keep their prices in mutual alignment. So this one can simply be explicit or implicit. So that one is just a collusive price leadership. Remember, collusion can occur either in a form of explicit or implicit way. Smaller firms within the market are effectively forced to follow price changes that have been determined by the dominant firms. So in this kind of the collusion, smaller firms do not have much say in there. They are always forced or pushed to follow prices determined by those large or dominant firms within the industry under collusive price leadership. And then the dominant price leadership. This one is different again. The dominant price leadership model occurs when one firm controls the vast or majority of the market share in the industry. When one firm is dominating the industry the most than any other firm, maybe the firm is having about 45% market share, that firm is a dominant firm. So that firm will always make decisions for itself, and other firms will always follow the strategy. So in that case, that will be a price leadership because of the dominant position of the firm. The firm is dominating enough to make decisions based on the price and production, and other firms must take the price. Within the industry, there are other smaller firms that provide the same products or services as leading firms. So in this dominant price leadership, the firm is not alone. There are other firms that are selling the same product. However, because of this firm is having more market share or more market dominance, this firm will always be favored to make decisions for the entire market, and other firms will simply follow behind. A dominant price leadership model is sometimes referred to as a partial monopoly. So this one can be referred as what we call a partial monopoly. Why? Because this firm on its own can make these bigger decisions that can influence other firms to make decisions too. Remember, the firm might be very much efficient in this kind of the market. Other firms might be inefficient. So that's why we say it might be regarded as what? As a partial monopoly, because on its own rank, it's alone, is making those big decisions that forces other firms to copy or follow the strategy due to the fact that they are dominated. They are not dominating. In this type of the model, the price leader might engage in predatory pricing, which refers to the practice of lowering price to levels that make it impossible for smaller firms to compete in the market. So this might happen purposefully, whereby the price leader simply decreases prices to make it difficult for each competitor to compete. Especially smaller firms can find it difficult to compete with the firm that is very much strategic, because those firms are producing less output at the higher cost, while this firm is very much efficient. It can play the game of lowering prices at the expense of other firms, because if they lower prices, it will be difficult for them to compete. They might end up even exiting the market because of they've lowered their prices maybe below even the cost of production. And then the explicit collusion. Explicit collusion is the formal agreement between firms within the same industry based on the price and output. So that's when firms simply meet and discuss pricing as well as production. So they do what we call the price fixing in the explicit or deliberately. This occurs when two or more firms in the same industry agree to make a joint economic decisions to keep their profits high. So that's when firms make the common decision or the joint decision through discussions to keep their profits very, very high. Explicit collusion involved the creation of cartels. So for the explicit collusion to occur, it's always easy if firms are having cartels. Remember, cartels occurs when firms form some association or groups within the same industry where they meet and discuss some price and production techniques. So under cartels, firms within the same industry create the moat wall for competitors so that they can dominate the market. Firms group themselves together. As they group themselves together, they make those uniform decisions. Sometimes the biggest cartel that can be, it can be about 60% in the market, meaning those firms, all of them that are grouped together, are dominating about 60% market share. So the rest of the firms outside the cartel are having 40%. So those firms will always having a great say and decisions in the market. They will always be dominating. So explicit collusion is always easy if firms are within cartels. Explicit collusion can be traced. It is an illegal behavior that deliberately limit market competition. If firms collude directly with discussion, that is illegal because it compromises competition and consumer choice. So that is illegal if it happens in that manner of discussion. It is easy. It easily occurs through formation of cartels. If firms can form cartels, they can easily do what we call an explicit collusion or deliberate discussions about economic conditions and economic decisions. So the cartel. So a cartel is known as an explicit collusion or agreement whereby oligopolists work together to fix prices and determine the market share, advertising strategies, and the product development. So this is known as a cartel. Firms get themselves together to discuss all economic decisions that can make them to dominate the market or to get more consumers. Also to make them that can make them to exploit consumers to higher prices, because if they group themselves as many as they can be, that will lead consumers without a choice but to accept the price that has been asked by all of these firms together. It is formed through associating competitors to make common decisions about prices and market output. That's how it's formed. Firms will simply associate themselves as groups so that they can make this decision based on the pricing and the production or output. A cartel is a group of independent market participants who collude with each other in order to improve their profits and dominate the market. So the reason why they form cartels, they want to ensure that they improve their profits. How do they improve profits? They maintain their prices very high. So as they are all in the same market selling at the higher price, which is similar, consumers are left without any choice. So they will have to demand the product if ever it's very necessary for them to have it. Therefore, cartels are formed in a form of an explicit collusion. It easily eliminates competition because firms, they always act at the common decisions. Cartels are usually associations in the same sphere of businesses and thus an alliance of rivals. So they form an alliance together while they are competitors and make those decisions. That's a cartel. And then what are the effects of collusion? How does collusion negatively affect the economy? Because most is having negative impact in the economy. Collusion limits competition and leave consumers with less market choices. If ever firms collude, there will be a limited competition because now firms are acting dependently and they act dependent, they make common decisions. In that case, that leave a consumer without any choice, because if this firm, maybe there are 5 firms that are selling at the same price, the choice will just be based on the fact that maybe the other supplier is offering the good service. Otherwise, choices are not based on prices anymore, because firms decide to be selling at the similar price. So the price is not considered as the one that will provide the choice. The choice can be made, can be available just because of the non-price competition strategy that will to be discussed. It basically drives prices high as businesses try to keep their profits high. So this thing of collusion always ensure that firms keep their prices very high because they want to maintain their profits at the higher level. Collusion can make firms lazy and avoid innovation. An effort to increase productivity, they can be more inefficient. So if ever collusion occurs, firms find themselves being independent, being interdependent. As a result, what happens? They find themselves being less innovative and creative because they are selling at the same price. There is a less incentive for them to be very much innovative and creative on developing their own products, because now they act in a common manner. They can only improve some of aspects that are known as the non-price competition strategies. But based on the pricing, they are all selling at the same price. Consumer is not having any choice. So attractions are no longer based on price for consumers. They are based on other strategies that can be used by firms to get consumers very close at the large sum. Collusion exploits consumers to higher prices since competitors reach mutual agreements. So if ever firms reach their mutual agreements, they become that unit and act independently. That lead to consumers being exploited to paying higher prices. So there is no longer a fair competition, or there is no longer a fairness to consumers, because if ever producers decide to sell at the same price, consumers will no longer compare the price. They will compare services offered in there, which now is no longer very much effective if ever the price is not considered as a part of the competition. It benefits firms at the expense of consumers. Firms are always benefiting through collusion because they charge higher prices while they are restricting output. So they always benefit while consumers are losing, because some consumers might not afford the product. So they will be going without the product while they need that particular product. So it leads them to be exploited, and producers benefit at the same time. So producers benefit at the expense of consumers through collusion because they always drive prices higher while consumers are not affording, which will lower their standard of living as well as economic development. So these are oligopoly diagrams of graphs. Here we talk about the kinked demand curve, supernormal profit, the normal profit, as well as economic loss. They are all illustrated here. So oligopoly market is faced by the kinked demand curve, which is having 2 segments, like I've said before. Kinked demand curve is the demand curve with 2 segments, which are top one relatively elastic and the bottom one relatively inelastic. The top segment is relatively elastic, which indicates that consumers are very quick to react to the increase in price of other firms to maintain their lower prices. And then the bottom segment is relatively inelastic, which indicates that consumers are less sensitive to the change in price. If if all producers if one producer has lowered the price. So what happens here? Consumers tend to be very sensitive to price change. If one firm decides to decrease the price under oligopoly, consumers will look at the competitors if ever they are still selling at the same price, or the price have also decreased. So what happens? The competitors, this is competitor A, this is B, this is C. So this one decreased the price. These ones will copy the strategy by decreasing their prices too. And they decrease their prices, that will lead to consumers for these 2 firms not to leave them floating to another competitor that was selling at the lower price, because all of them, 2 of them, are selling at the lower price. Therefore, any expected profit by firm A will be lost immediately because firms are still selling at the similar price. These ones have already lowered the price to match the price of the competitor that was trying to steal market share or consumers. So in this case, the demand curve, which is the bottom segment, becomes relatively inelastic because consumers tend to be less sensitive if the price is changing with the common margin or with the same margin to all firms or competitors. So consumers find no incentive to leave their supplier for other competitors. So in this case, consumers are not going to leave their suppliers for other suppliers if ever they're all selling at the same price. Remember, in this case, one firm decreases the price. Other firms will copy the price as they notice that immediately. So any planned benefit will be lost immediately by this firm that has decreased the price, because all other competitors are now selling at the similar price with it, which means now consumers will never see any incentive from leaving their suppliers to the alternating supplier, because all of these firms are selling at the similar price. So in their consumer reaction is very low. That's why we say consumers are less sensitive to the change in price if all firms are selling at the same price, being lower. So this is the kinked demand curve being illustrated here. This one is the top segment, and this one is the bottom segment. You can see the top one is relatively elastic, and the bottom one is relatively inelastic. There is an arrow indicating top segment, and then this is the bottom segment. So what happens here? This is the selling price, which is 50 rand. All firms are selling at 50 rand this product. So if one firm or one competitor decide to increase the price from 50 to 90 rand, what will happen? The demand on these goods or on this firm will decline from 30 units to 10 units. Why is the demand decreasing? Because these consumers are faced with the perfect substitute for this particular product. If ever one firm increases the price, other firms will keep their prices lower to avoid losing their consumers. As a result, this will lead to consumers not demanding more of this firm. They will be demanding less of these goods from this particular firm, and the most demanded goods will be demanded from other competitors that are still selling at the lower price, which is 50 rand. Remember, one increase the price to 90 and others maintain the price at 50 rand. The one that is selling at 90 rand will be losing its consumers, because consumers will demand less of goods, and the meaning consumers will become very sensitive to the increase in price because they are having alternating products that are available at the lower price. They are having the perfect substitutes for the particular product in this firm that are selling at the lower price. Therefore, consumers tend to quickly react by demanding less of the product from this firm while they're demanding more in other firms. That's why this demand curve become relatively elastic, because consumers are very sensitive to the increase in price while other firms are still selling at the lower price. There is this belief: if ever one oligopoly firm increase the price, other firms might maintain their prices lower to avoid losing their consumers. Therefore, the one with the higher price will be losing its profits and revenues to competitors that are still selling at the lower price. Then that creates the top segment of the demand curve, which is known to be relatively elastic, because consumers are very sensitive to the change in price, especially if the price is increasing while competitors are still selling at the lower price. Then consumers become more sensitive. There will be a quick reaction. And then let's look at the bottom segment. Let's assume that the selling price is 50 rand. And then one competitor decides to decrease the price in order to gain more consumers, more profits, and more market share. What will happen in the market if ever there are some competitors that are selling the same product? Competitors will also decrease their prices. They will lower their prices immediately as they discover that the competitor have lowered the price. They will lower their prices. Look what will happen. For this firm that we are discussing here, as it is selling at 20 rand now, there will be only 5 units increase from 30 to 35 rand on this product that is sold by this particular firm. Why there is this smaller margin of the change? It's because competitors have copied the strategy. They have also lowered their prices in order to avoid losing their consumers to this competitor. Therefore, any expected profit by this particular firm will be lost immediately, because consumers will see no incentive, or will find no incentive of floating from their own suppliers to this supplier, because all these firms are selling at the similar price as much as they supply the similar or homogeneous product. So this creates the demand curve that is known as the bottom segment, which is regarded to be relatively inelastic. So this demand curve is inelastic relatively because consumers are not sensitive to the price decrease if ever all firms are selling at the same price that has been lowered. So that gives us the bottom segment that is relatively inelastic. This simply means Within this distance, consumers are not very sensitive to the decrease in price because all competitors are selling the same product at the lower or the same price. So consumers will not be leaving their suppliers for alternating suppliers because all of them are selling at the same price. So that creates what we call the bottom segment. So the top segment of the kinked demand curve. A top segment is the elastic part of the demand curve. It is elastic, meaning consumers are very much active in their own making quick decisions if ever the price is increasing. Price changes and output have a huge impact on the creation of this demand curve, especially if the price is increasing. Consumers will always be quick to react in that because higher price while their competitors will lead to other firms keeping the price down and then consumers leaving the firm and demanding in the other market. As much as oligopoly firms are very much interdependent, their actions are not always guaranteed if individual firm increase its own price. If one firm increase the price, it is not always guaranteed that other firms will increase their prices too. As a result, while others are keeping their prices down, one increases the price. That will lead to consumers being very sensitive and demanding less of the product. That will create the relatively inelastic demand curve, which is the top segment. Reactions are more guaranteed if the output decision is made through cartels. So in that case, they are guaranteed because they are made through cartels or those groupings or associations. If one firm increases the price, competitors are likely to keep their prices lower, which will lead to the firm with the higher price losing its consumers and profits. And then consumer sensitiveness is illustrated by what? By a flat demand curve or top segment, which is relatively inelastic. And then the top segment, market share is the important aspect of oligopolies for them to achieve high profit. It's very important that they dominate the market. By keeping their price low, they avoid losing their market share. They will not lose their consumers if their prices are still low and reasonable. But those firms with higher prices will lose their consumers if products are the same. The individual firm with higher prices loses its consumers to competitors that are selling at the lower price. They will always lose their consumers. Consumers react quickly to higher prices in oligopoly because there is a competition to provide them with alternatives which are sold at the lower price. This results to the decrease in quantity demanded with the greater margin, which creates the top elastic segment of kinked demand curve. So, with this quick reaction of consumers, there will be a creation of what? There will be a creation of the top segment because consumers will be very sensitive to price change. If the price is increasing, they will simply demand less of that particular product from that particular firm and demand from other firms that are supplying the similar product, which means sensitiveness of the consumer, then the top segment will be determined. The bottom segment of the kinked demand curve. The price war is a common feature of oligopoly firms, meaning if firms are competing over the price, there will always be a price war. Firms are tactical. They lower their prices to gain more market share from competitors. So one firm will act independently by decreasing its prices, and then unlike the other firm might copy the strategy by lowering their prices too. Lowered prices might create an environment that is not profitable for competitors. If one firm is selling at the lower price while others are selling at the higher price, that will be not profitable for other competitors, while the firm with the lower price will be profitable, will get more profits in there. So firms are always willing to maintain their profits. However, oligopoly firms quickly react to protect their profits if one firm have made profitable decision at their expense. If one firm make a decision that will give it more profit at the expense of the competitor, and then what will happen? Other firms will copy the strategy and make that same decision of which will be profitable. Then whatever expected profit will be lost immediately by this firm that have lowered its price as a mean of making a profitable decision. Implicit collusion occurs as a form of individual protective measure. So in this case, the implicit collusion occurs because the firm is trying to protect itself from losing its consumers. We continue with the bottom segment. If one competitor decreases the price of its prices to earn more market share and profits, competitors will do the same. They will also lower their price to protect their profits and protect their market share. This creates a war zone for prices and result to the losses of expected profit gain. The firm that has planned to gain the profit by lowering the price will lose its own expected gains immediately, because firms or competitors will adopt the same decision that is profitable by lowering their prices. Or if all firms are selling at the similar price under pure oligopoly, consumers do not find any incentive of floating to another competitor. As a result, what happens? Consumers tend to be less sensitive to the decrease in price if all firms are selling at the lower price and the same price. Then that will be creating our lower segment or bottom segment of the kinked demand curve. Consumers' reaction tend to be less sensitive to the decrease in price if the entire market have adopted to sell at the same lower price. Consumers will never find any incentive to leave their market that is usual to demand goods from other market. So that leads to the creation of the bottom segment, which is the relatively inelastic under the kinked demand curve. So as for profits and loss, oligopoly firms are believed to be making smaller profits in short run and the long run, because they always set their prices very high to maintain their profits. So relatively high market prices and less competition increase opportunity to keep their profits high, because remember, there are also barriers to enter there. There are also high prices and there is less opportunity for the entry of new businesses. However, long run profits decrease because the market entry is not completely blocked. Some firms can still enter the market to increase competition, therefore, that will reduce profits a little bit in the long run. Efficient and dominant firms have a power to maintain their high profits in both short run and long run, because they dictate the market behavior. They're the one that make main decisions within the market, and other firms normally follow. So they're the one that always make long run and short run profits within the economy. Oligopolists with high production costs find the competition hard if they have to adopt prices determined by firms that are producing at the economies of scale. So you cannot simply adopt the strategy of the firm that is producing at the economies of scale, because if we are inefficient or producing at the economies of scale, it will be difficult to stand for that particular competition that will force you out of the market. This creates the condition of economic loss or normal profit for those firms. So normal profit is achieved if average revenues exceed average cost, or total cost exceed, total revenues exceed total cost. So this is the other condition. Total revenue, TR is more than TC, or AR is more than AC. Then the firm will enjoy supernormal profit. Economic loss prevails if average cost exceed average revenues, or total cost exceed total revenues. The normal profit can be achieved if average revenues are equal to the average cost, or total cost are equals to total revenues. So this is the demand curve with the average revenue, with the marginal revenue drawn there. So average revenue is still equal to the demand, and that is marginal revenue. We can see our output or quantity and cost and revenues. So there is the price that is known as a condition price, which is 100. And then let's see where are the costs turning. That is our marginal cost for the firm. And then that point is known as a profit maximization point, because that's where MC intersects MR. MC is equal to MR at this point. Therefore, the firm decides to maximize its profit in there. That's why we label it E. It's an equilibrium for the firm. So we regard that one is an economic profit. Let's see the reason for that. Yeah, the reason for this being economic profit or supernormal profit is because our average cost is turning below our average revenue. Look, our average revenues are up there being 100. Here they are, but our average costs are down there being 70. So revenues are more than cost of doing the business. Therefore, the firm is making what we call a supernormal profit, and shaded area indicate supernormal profit. So this is the expression of the graph. At point E, MR equal to MC. This is the point. MR equal to MC, the firm maximizes the profit. We call this one the profit maximization point. And then shaded area indicates economic profit. There is a shaded area indicating supernormal profit. Average revenues exceed average cost. You can see average revenues are 100, average costs are 70. So AR equals to 100 and AC equals to 70. So AC turns below AR curve. So average cost curve is turning below this AR curve. That means the firm is enjoying the supernormal profit. So the profit is calculated as profit equal to average revenue minus average cost times the quantity, which will be 100 minus 70 times 50, which will give us 1,500. The firm is enjoying the supernormal profit under the oligopoly because its revenues are more than its cost of doing the business. And then this will be indicating economic loss because conditions have been explained. Our marginal cost is coming in there. And then that is the profit maximization point because that is the point where MC equals to MR. These, both of them are equal. So the firm maximizes its profit. There is our average cost turning just above. Look now. Our average revenues are equal to 50. These are our revenues. And then our average costs are turning just above there. Let's see its average cost indeed. And then 200 is equal to average cost of doing the business. But 50 is our revenues. Therefore, the firm in this case is making economic loss. Why? Because the cost of doing the business exceed revenues earned in the business. There you see shaded area in the indicating economic loss because revenues are lower than the cost of doing the business. Then we say the firm is making economic loss. You can see average cost curve is just turning just there above our average revenue curve. So the firm is making economic loss. And then our 90 becomes the profit maximization output. And then the graph is being explained. The same graph comes back. And then at point E, the firm maximizes profit. So we call this one the profit maximization point, which is point E. This is the point. Shaded area indicates economic loss because average revenues are lower than average cost or average cost exceed average revenues. Average revenues are equal to 50, average cost are equal to 200. Average cost exceed average revenues. So in this case, that means average cost curve is turning above average revenues to formulate economic loss for the firm. AC equals to 200. There you see the costs are 200, and then revenues AR, this one is AR, equals to 50. Therefore, we will say loss equals to AR minus AC times 2. How much is the value of AR? It is 50. So we say 50 and then minus 200, which will give us what? 150 times 90, which is the output. And then that will give us negative 13,500. So the firm is operating at the economic loss of negative 13,500 because the revenues are lower than the cost of doing the business, or cost exceed or are greater than revenues of doing the business. This is the normal profit now. So normal profit, remember, prevail when revenues, average revenues are equal to what we call average cost. So that is our marginal cost. And then profit maximization point, okay, where MR equals to MC. So they are both equal at this point. And then let's see, you can see that our average revenues equals to 300. So we will see where are our costs. And then that is equilibrium. And then that is the average cost. Average cost. So if this is AC, look at the turning point for you to determine if the firm is making a profit or a loss. The turning point is simply on the AR curve along. That simply means the firm is making a normal profit because revenues are equal to 300 along here, and the costs are also equal to 300. So the firm is not making a profit, neither a loss. So in this case, the firm is making what we call a normal profit, or the firm is breaking even. So this is the graph being explained now. Point E, the firm is maximizing profit. So we call this one a profit maximization point where MR equals to MC. That is the point in there. And then average revenues are equal to average cost. You can see average revenues are equal to 300 and average cost are equal to 300. So we say average revenue equal to 300. There you go. And AC 300. Therefore, we say AC turns along or on AR. You can see AC is turning straight here. They are both equal. Then the profit will be normal profit equals to AR minus AC times quantity. So AR equal to 300 minus AC, which is 300 times quantity. So any number multiplied by 0 will give you 0. So 0 times 120 equals to 0. Then the firm is making what you call a normal profit. A normal profit, not making a profit, neither a loss. We call this one a break even. And then the last portion is the non-price committing strategies. Like I've said before, under oligopoly, firms are not committing over the price because they avoid to have this thing that we call the price war. If ever firms try to commit over the price, remember they watch each other very close. If one firm decreases the price, other firms will be decreasing the price, and that is regarded as a price war within the oligopoly. Therefore, firms end up deciding to have this mutual agreement together to be very much interdependent so that they can set uniform or common price within the market. So as they compete, they will always compete using other strategies that are known to be the non-price competition strategies. That means they don't compete over the price, but they use other strategies to compete. So non-price competition strategies often occur in oligopoly where few firms dominate the market. So they decide to form that collusion together and compete over other strategies other than competing over the price. Due to the litany of few firms in the market, these firms tend to compete in non-price measures to distinguish themselves. So they don't use the price, only non-price measures can distinguish themselves, even their profits. Such competition will be otherwise known as a quality competition where oligopoly firms depend on their quality improvement in intensities to survive. They depend on what they can do best in order to survive in the market. They don't depend on manipulating the price. So we have the product differentiation. Firms in here differentiate their product, make their product not to be exactly the same. So product differentiation allows for a firm to establish its product for its competitors to win over the greater market share. So these products are developed to the sense that they are not the same, they are differentiated. They can appear being the same in appearance. However, if you still come closer or make use of them, they are not the same. However, they might be perfect substitute for one another. The more different the products are of rival firms, the lower the cross effect between their markets with regards to both non-price price variables. So you can talk about, in this case, if firms are having most of different products in them, if those products differ the most, they are not simply similar, those firms can simply compete in them without even using the price, because that's a strategy. By offering a wide range of products, firms can not only achieve economies of scope, but also be able to expand their markets. If ever their products are improved, you find that one product is serving so many branches, so many aspects, so that it can be available to various consumers. You find that you have maybe a particular market where you are selling a particular product, but that product is categorized. There's a grouping of two, grouping of three, grouping of three. It is called by different names. So in that case, products are made different while they are maybe the same within that particular firm, but they are made to be different because they are being categorized for the consumer attention. At times, consumers use advertising to attract the attention of consumers. Advertising, if they use aggressive or intensified advertising, they win over the market, they win consumers over their competitors. So smaller firms find it difficult to compete in this kind of the market because they don't have enough money for advertising and marketing. Advertising is one of the most important non-price competition strategies used by firms to inform and persuade consumers to buy the product. So for consumers to buy the product, they will have to be manipulated or persuaded through advertising. Great awareness about the product create a desire for consumers to demand or to buy or to notice the product. If ever they are well informed and reminded about the product, they find themselves having the desire to own that particular product, so they end up buying. Advertising increases market share because product awareness is continuously created. Consumers tend to be very much aware of the product and its importance. They end up buying because it creates a desire. Loyalty schemes. Firms happen to create the loyalty schemes to their firms. To their consumers. Most firms offer out loyalty cards in order to capture market attention and retain their consumers. They ensure that if ever consumers are buying, they have those cards that will offer them discounts. So that will allow the firm to keep on coming back the consumer to keep on buying back from the firm because there are this point that are accumulated every time the consumer buys. So that's a part of the loyalty scheme. Loyalty cards are a form of differentiation where consumers are given incentive to purchase from that specific firm. So there is that incentive or benefit to purchase from the particular firm. Therefore, consumers will always be going back to demand from this firm because of these schemes. These schemes improve market share of the firm and result to the increased market dominance, because now consumers will always run to the point where there is always incentive. After sales services. So in this case, we talk about a situation whereby you will buy the consumer, there will be extra service given to you. After sales service is crucial for reputation and brand loyalty of the firm. And then in order to retain consumers or customers, they would have to provide great after-sale services to customers. So customers will be able to return to obtain the service they demand. For instance, this happened in the petrol filling stations. If ever one buy the petrol, sometimes they will be asking you any extra service like, do you have enough water in there? Oil, is it okay? Are your tires all balanced? That is the extra service which is known as after-sales service that is offered to the consumer to attract their attention to call back even in future. The product proliferation. So in this case, we'll talk about organizations whereby products are made to be very much variety. So product proliferation occurs when organizations make many variations of the same product. One product might be variated, might be developed to the point that it is serving more products. Product can be grouped. For instance, you talk about maybe a particular company. It can be maybe a VW that is providing cars. So as they are selling cars, there is that brand of a car that is a Polo, but it is separated to maybe it can be a Polo Vivo, a Polo GTI, TSI. So the main brand is Polo, but it is splitted in between to variety of products, so that this good can be made to appear being unique, but they are the same products. But differentiation is there. Then we call that the product proliferation, whereby the product is given so much aspect and so much branches, while it is the similar product. Most that is common under monopolistic competition. This can be done through different color combination, product sizes, and different product uses. This produces diversity for the firm, as it is able to capture sizable portion of the market share. So there will always be a higher market share if ever firms are using this kind of the non-price non-price competition strategy. And then there's also branding. Branding always makes the product to appear more unique than other product of competitors. So product branding is the development of a distinctive brand for a given product with the intention to reach brand target consumers. And then product branding is an essential element to consider as a part of broader branding strategy, because it gives the product that personality that is unique on its own as compared to the one of other competitors. And then this is the assessment. Send the graph and answer questions that follow. This was taken from the pivotal examination of Gauteng in 2019. This is the demand curve that should be analyzed. You can see we have the price and the quantity, and then our collusive price is at point B, and then there's a point A there under what you call a relatively elastic demand curve, and point G relatively inelastic. Then we have that F in there indicated. And then identify the letter that represents the elastic demand curve. This is the point F, there it's given. And then assessment again, give one example of an industry operating under this type of the structure. We have the car industry, steel industry, film industry, television industry, cell phone industry, gas industry, banks industry, and then any other answer can be accepted. That is correct, but it worth 1 mark. 1 mark. And then we continue. Briefly describe the concept of overt or explicit collusion. An open is open and happens when oligopolies formally meet to decide on prices and production. That's an explicit collusion that was discussed before. This type of collusion is illegal and is normally investigated by Competition Commission. Heavy penalties are imposed on oligopolies if they are found guilty of collusion in this form. We continue. Why are the firms in this market structure reluctant to participate in the price competition? It will cause other firms to cut their prices and profits. They want to increase their market share so that they can sell more products and increase their profits. And then we continue. Use the graph above to explain why the oligopoly would not decrease its prices to increase its market share. Oligopolies are interdependent as each seller influenced by other sellers' actions. And then in oligopoly, if an oligopoly decreases its prices, its competitors will also do the same, which will lead to the price war. Any profit gains will quickly disappear because of the competition, since firms are now all competing at the same price. The above will cause the demand curve to be inelastic because the reduction in the price will result to smaller percentage change in the quantity demanded if all firms are selling at the similar price within the market. And then this is another activity under oligopoly. We have oligopoly cell phone services, Cell C, Vodacom, ATA, and MTN. A report tracks that, data and shows that Vodacom is the front of the pack. Vodacom has now firmly established itself as the dominant South African mobile operator, showing its rivals a clean pair of heels in all the national speed and latency categories. Then these are the questions. What is the nature of the service offered by the firm above? And then how is the shape of the demand curve? Briefly describe the term oligopoly. What does it mean for Vodacom to be a dominant firm? And then how do oligopoly competitors benefit from collusion? And then in this case, they offer homogeneous or differentiated product, that one mark. And then the demand curve is key. And oligopoly is a market structure that exists when there are few large firms that operate in the industry. And then it has a significant large market share than its competitors or rivals. So that's why it is known as a dominant firm. How will oligopoly competitors benefit from collusion? And then having their performance increase, they will always increase their performance if they collude, preventing uncertainties that may occur if they don't collude. And then having a large market share by preventing entry of new firms, they can block the entry of new firms through collusion. Any other response that's relevant might be given a mark. So at this point, I thank you. I believe the lesson will have a greater impact on you as we'll be preparing for any upcoming assessment. Remember, you need to know the behavior for oligopoly is much different as compared to that behavior of the perfect market, monopolistic as well as the monopoly. You need to know the behavior, and remember there's an essay here under characteristic. The last time we had an essay, it was 2017 under the oligopoly. So it's a part of our examination guidelines essays under microeconomics. So take care and enjoy the lesson as you keep on viewing it. Goodbye.